public here who is anyone from the public who is interested in making a comment to the board? Seeing none, we're just going to jump right into attendance. So please, when I call your name, your title, the agency that you're with, and any other fun tidbit about you that you want to share with the group. Ram.
Good morning, everyone. Chief Operating Officer for the Office of Higher Education. Thank you.
Bob Berry.
Hi, manager for the database team in BITS.
Julie Bisai.
Good morning, Julie Bisai with data coordinator for the Office of Early Childhood, mostly with Care for Kids, but also other early care and ed data.
Welcome. We're happy to have you join us. Patrick Flaherty. Thought I saw him.
I'm here. I am here. Director of Research at the Connecticut Department of Labor.
Ajit Gopalakrishnan.
Morning, Chief Performance Officer, Department of Education.
Lauren Jorgensen.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Jorgensen, the Director of Institutional Research at UConn.
Jan Keeney.
Hi, Jan Keeney, Interim Associate VP for the Office of Decision Support and Institutional Research at CSU, and also CSU's Data Privacy Officer.
Fred North.
Hi, Fred North, Department of Children and Families, Director for Data Reporting and Evaluation.
Maura Preventure.
Good morning, Maura Preventure. I'm Vice President of Research with the Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges.
Paul Schmitz.
Morning, Director of HMIS and Strategic Analysis at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness.
Susan Smith.
Hi, good morning. I'm Susan Smith. I'm Director of Business Intelligence and Analytics for the Department of Social Services.
And Michael Girolamo. I apologize for not getting you earlier.
That's right. I'm Michael Girolamo. I'm Chief Data Officer for Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services.
Great, welcome. So Michael and Julie are new data governing board representatives, and so they will be joining us moving forward. So I'm going to let Scott introduce himself and our staff people.
For a couple people I've met, I'm Scott Gall, Chief Data Officer, Office of Policy and Management. There's two people we're going to give quick introductions to that are you'll see in meetings in the future. One person's not actually here, so I'm going to do the introduction more quickly. But we have Andre Simons is Secretary at OPM. He will be occasionally in some of the public meetings to help with minutes taking, getting the documents up on the website and so on. So if you see Andre in a meeting, or if Andre contacts you about a meeting, just please be friendly with him. He is wonderful and very helpful, but you'll just sort of see him helping us in the administration of this occasionally. And we have a new staff who joined a couple of weeks ago. Ashley Dame, who's here as research analyst at OPM, will be working a lot on P20 Win, and you will hear from her frequently, starting basically now, as requests come through to be sort of a partner on shepherding these through the process from end to end, and working on data analysis projects here at OPM. Ashley, do you want to say hi? Yeah, just give a little shout out to everyone.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for that. That was perfect. So I look forward to getting to work with you all more and learn a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Great. So the first item, well, we've rearranged the agenda a bit. Sorry about that. So the first item that we now have on the agenda is an incoming data request that involves many of the agencies who are participating in P20 Win. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, Claudia, and Lane to do a quick presentation on the data request that they are putting together.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Katie. And by way of introduction, my name's Claudia Newman-Martin. I'm a partner in the Boston Consulting Group's, or BCG's, education and workforce practice, and I work alongside Lane McBride and Sarah Burns, both of whom are on the call today. I know we have a short amount of time, and we'll have an opportunity to workshop our data request with you all on October 21st. So for today's conversation, we have 3 objectives. Number 1, we wanted to present our current research and analysis plan. Secondly, wanted to provide an overview of the P20 wind data fields that we would hope to collect from different agencies. And finally, we want to answer any initial questions that this group has for us and in preparation for the October 21st session together. In terms of the current research project that we're proposing, I think it's important to situate it in the context of a report that was prepared in 2016 called Untapped Potential. And this report shed light on the number, nature, and needs of disengaged and disconnected youth in Connecticut in 4 ways. First of all, it defined and quantified 2 distinct populations, disconnected and disengaged youth. It analysed the impact of racial and economic inequities on these groups, identified key factors that can accelerate young people toward disengagement or disconnection, and then invited stakeholders to join the conversation and take a variety of actions to be involved in supporting disengaged and disconnected young people. And thanks very much, Ajit, for posting that in the chat. Of course, the events of the past years have had a very big impact on young people, and that's really inspired our interest in refreshing that original report. We have 2 objectives for the research that we're proposing to undertake over the next 6 to 9 months. First of all, we want to refine our understanding of disengaged and disconnected and you know, what are the real hallmarks of disengaged and disconnected young people in the context of what's happened in Connecticut over the past few years. So this will be refreshing a view on the size of those populations. We also want to redefine disengaged and disconnected and think about moderately disconnected versus severely disconnected as 2 different groups. And then we also want to get an aggregate view on the size and concentration of disengaged and disconnected populations under refined definitions, and really wanting to look at both educational and workforce outcomes for young people. And we're defining the age range as 14 to 26 for this research. We also want to examine the environmental characteristics or risk factors that most strongly influence individual academic and employment journeys and look at how those might have changed over the past couple of years. So these are the 2 objectives. I think, as you can see at the bottom of this page, our ultimate goal is to raise awareness of the size, geographic distribution, and nature of populations of disengaged and disconnected young people in Connecticut. I'll hand over to Sarah, who'll speak in a little bit more depth about the questions we'll be addressing in our analytical approaches.
Yeah, so we'll just spend a couple of minutes doing a double click essentially on each of the research objectives that Claudia outlined. So as Claudia mentioned, the first research objective here is really around refining our understanding of disengaged and disconnected young people in Connecticut. The left-hand side of this page outlines the specific research questions that we hope to address through the analysis, and the right-hand side of the page has at least a very high-level overview of the analytical approach that we would propose to take. So what you can see here for this first research objective, what we're really seeking to do is to understand at the population or aggregate level, kind of who and where young people are in the state of Connecticut who are disengaged and who are disconnected. And so we would propose to do that through a couple of approaches outlined on the right-hand side of the page. First, just refreshing our understanding of disengaged and disconnected populations using the same definition, criteria, and thresholds that were used in 2016 to have a baseline for comparison. Then, as Claudia mentioned, we are seeking to sort of build on and refine the initial definitions of disengaged and disconnected from 2016. And so we propose to use a variety of sensitivity analysis techniques to help define sort of additional criteria and thresholds that we might use to categorize young people as fitting into a disengaged or disconnected population. And then finally, once those kind of additional criteria and thresholds are set, the kind of last part of meeting this research objective would be to basically run a series of descriptive analyses to, again, as Claudia mentioned, understand sort of overall population level size, geographic concentration, and again, population level demographic profiles of these populations of young people. The second research objective that Claudia flagged is more related to how we think about the risk factors or the environmental characteristics that will most strongly or have historically most strongly influenced young people's individual academic and employment outcomes. So again, here we have research questions on the left that we hope to address and proposed analytical approach on the right. I think here the real core question that we're seeking to address, as I mentioned, is what are the factors that have the most outsized impact on young people's individual academic and employment journeys? And so we would seek to conduct that analysis through the use of a classification model, which would actually enable us to look at a wide variety of potential environmental characteristics or risk factors related to a young person, their home environment, and their work and or school environment, and actually understand which of those characteristics do, as I said, have a quantified outsized impact on outcomes. So in order to pursue both of the research objectives that I just mentioned, we are, of course, requesting data from a number of P20 WIN participating agencies, 9 in total that are listed on this page. I know that we will have a chance, hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, including on October 21st, to dig into much greater depth with each of the experts on this call with respective agencies, but wanted to provide a high-level view of the types of data we're hoping to collect and from which participating agencies. In the appendix of this document, which I assume Katie may be able to make available to the group after this call, we do have included a detailed view of the specific data fields that are included in our preliminary data request for each of these agencies. We also understand that data dictionaries are constantly being updated. I know for some of the newer participating agencies, those dictionaries may not be uploaded. And so we are eager to sort of work with you all as individual data owners to kind of refine these requests moving forward. So I want to be very mindful of the group's time and hopefully leave a couple of minutes for questions if there are any at this initial stage. And so maybe I'll just close by providing a preview of the topics that we hope to cover when at least a large majority of this group hopefully is able to reconvene on October 21st. I think first and foremost, we would be very eager to discuss with this group on the 21st the relative feasibility of collecting the types of data fields that we're requesting as part of our data request. Second, we also know that the experts in this room have a lot more context around how best to interpret the variety of data points that are included in the data dictionary. And so we're very eager to sort of get your counsel and understand some of your expertise around how best to interpret some of those agency-specific data points that might be harder for us to interpret from the outside in. And then finally, Claudia kind of alluded to this in her discussion of how our current research in 2022 hopes to build on the 2016 research. But one of those risk factors or environmental characteristics that we're hoping to include as part of our quantitative analysis is data from the justice system. And so we are pursuing kind of in parallel to this process, exploration of how we might be able to collect justice data on the same population of young people for the same time period. And so one of the things that we may look to discuss with this group on the 21st is, again, to sort of get your counsel and discuss potential ways that it might be possible to actually move to an integrated data set that we can ultimately use to construct our analysis. So I will pause there. I know I think have a couple of minutes left, and maybe, Katie, I will ask you if you'd propose that we turn the floor back over to you, or if you would like us to open up for a couple questions.
Yeah, we have time for a few questions.
Okay.
So people feel free to speak up if you have any questions.
I see Jan's hand up.
Hi, Claudia. I thank you both for your presentation. It sounds like valuable work. I was wondering where the funding's coming for this.
Yep. So we're partnering with the Connecticut Opportunity Project on this piece of work, and we're working in partnership with them, and they're funding the work.
Opportunity Project. Okay. Is there to be any qualitative component to this analysis?
Yes, we are doing interviews with a variety of stakeholders who work in the youth development, education to workforce space, so that we have a good understanding of sort of what people are seeing and living on the ground. There are parallel research projects that the Connecticut Opportunity Project also has in motion, looking at some of the different benchmarks within the nation around supporting young people, and also a piece of work that is grounded in culturally responsive practice that is engaging young people directly on their experience. And so we'll seek to learn from the interviews that we're doing, as well as incorporate the findings of those two parallel research projects into our work. Our focus will be more on analysing the data and seeing what we can learn from the numbers. But of course, as every researcher knows, what you see in the numbers, mapped with what people are seeing, living, breathing on the ground is the most powerful way to get to insight. And so we'll very much aim to do that.
Thank you.
Ajit.
Hi, Claudia. Thank you for sharing that. I know we'll get more into the specifics. You had in SDE, you had information about students, mobility, educational outcomes, attendance, behavior, et cetera, as we had done in the first project, Untapped Potential work. But you also had teachers listed there. Could you speak to what that focus is and where that's coming from?
Yeah, so I can jump in here. I think the aspiration here is more related to the environmental characteristics aspect of the work, where I think our aspiration in entering into this research is to collect as wide a variety of potential environmental characteristics as we can, which from the education point of view could be inclusive of teachers' educational background, certain profiles of teachers, et cetera. We're very open to continuing that discussion of what you all feel is appropriate to include under our umbrella of risk factors or environmental characteristics or not. But our goal in approaching that specific part of the analytical exercise and the classification model, of course, would be to go as wide as we can in order to distill kind of what the actual quantitatively demonstrated risk factors or characteristics are that have an outsized impact on student outcomes.
Yeah, that may be subsequent discussion. We could definitely talk about whether school level aggregate characteristics can suffice for that, or do we need to get down to the individual teacher level? So we could discuss that at a later point. Yeah, thank you.
Totally agree. Scott, did you have a question?
I was going to answer one of your questions, but just to do it for the group as well. One of the things you asked is the potential to link with justice system data. This is, I would say, at least the third fairly ambitious request that we've had in the last year that's looked at linking somehow sort of the set of agencies that are part of P20 with juvenile justice system. So we've had what I would characterize as pretty productive discussions with judicial branch about the potential for that. It's a different branch of government, so the rules are slightly different, but they're not wholly different. So that's not part of the standard process as it stands today, but I would say this is one of like a long string of requests that I don't anticipate ending. So we're going to try and dig into that sort of in parallel, but can bring this to the friends in the judicial branch as well to highlight the rationale for that. So.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
I think we have time for one more question, if there are any. Scott still has his hand up. Okay, so the 21st is our regularly scheduled learning session. We are going to replace that with a working session to go over this, to discuss this request in more detail. And so please bring your questions with you. I will send an updated calendar invite to everybody. And I encourage everyone who is here, even the agencies that are not officially part of the request, but who could potentially become a part of the request, to also join on that Friday. Ajit?
Just going back to the analytic methods too, I think this is something that we can discuss further, is looking at existing work that's already out there in this space. And one example would be our early warning system research that we have, which looks at, which doesn't look far enough out. It only looks within our system, but it does use machine learning methods. So I would be intrigued to see, you mentioned classification models, but I don't know if those are like what types of classification models, so I would be intrigued sort of when we get to that phase, just to see like, how can you build on existing research that's already there. Like I wouldn't want it to be completely disconnected. Sorry to use that term, but disconnected from existing work. So we can discuss that as well.
That's terrific. Thanks, Ajit. And our intention is certainly not to reinvent the wheel. So I think anything we can learn from the data systems that are already in place will be the foundation for this work. And we'll be mindful about ensuring that we build on that and build on it in consistent ways.
And if I could just quickly, this is Michael from Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, going off one of Ajit's prior comments that, and we might have a one-on-one conversation, but mental health and substance use data is highly protected. And I'm still not completely clear about how that data will serve to inform disconnected and disengaged, because that could be, that's definitely open to interpretation. So just not a question, but just a comment I'd like to, discuss further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think to Sarah's earlier point, we've tried to really open the aperture and cast the net wide, and we really would appreciate your thought partnership in what's appropriate and not appropriate to include in the analysis and how to interpret various things, because obviously it can cut both ways. If we have more people accessing services, that could actually mean people are feeling more engaged, not less engaged. And so I think those are some of the tensions that we'll need to work through.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
I could just toss up maybe for discussion on the 21st. Thanks, Katie. Sorry for just jumping in. Not now. I think what the intended purpose of the work is, what are the outcomes you're expecting. I think that's really important for understanding the value of this for the state. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a great discussion, great presentation. Updated calendar invite will be sent to everybody for the 21st. Obviously, feel free to share your questions or comments in advance. We will be happy to collect them. Okay, so moving on to the next item is the executive board meeting update. So our meeting of the executive board on September 8th was very exciting. We voted to approve and add the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to P20 WIN. Michael Girolamo is here as our new data governing board representative. And so we are working with them to get them fully integrated into the P20 WIN system. Michael, I don't know if you had a few comments you wanted to make. I know I didn't talk to you about this at all. So putting you on the spot if you have anything to say.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, yep, like I said, I serve as the Chief Data Officer, and Scott and I have been talking about P20 WINs for over a year now. So, Scott, thank you for your patience with that. But as I've said before, even today, but earlier, that again, it's just highly sensitive data that we have here with mental health and addiction. So, always just wanting to be mindful of how this data will be used. But with that, still very excited to be at the table and a part of these projects. So thank you.
Great. Other highlights from the executive board meeting is the creation of a consent management work group, which has been a topic that we've discussed pretty regularly over the last year. So we are working to get that up and off the ground. So if anybody here is interested in participating in that work group, please let me know. Hopefully we will get a group together soon to meet. And then for the November meeting, we anticipate our agenda including an equity discussion, research partnerships, a progress update on our data requests, and sustainability. Okay, so the next item is the approval of the metadata management policy. So I shared this with everybody to review. I'm going to turn it over to Scott to discuss this a bit more and see where we go.
I'm going to briefly screen share the language in case people do not have it committed to memory. So this is, where'd this go? Sorry. Stop subtitles. This is, so one of the things that is the role for this board is developing, establishing, implementing data governance policies for P20 WIN. With kind of the adoption of new legal framework last year, we want to build on what we've done in the past, but sort of develop a new set of policy and procedure documents going forward. So we've started last year, I think, going through a list of those that were priorities that the group identified. I think it would be great to hear future priorities. Here's other things that you want to dig into the policy development process for. One of the ones that we started some point earlier this year was policy and process for metadata, and we are bringing this to the board today. And you can tell us if you're ready for this or not, but ultimately bring it to the board for a vote and approval for the policy and the process documents. We will, sort of work to develop the policy and process in the different areas that this group identifies, and we'll ultimately then bring the policy and process documents to this group to essentially vote on for approval and then adopt those as the system policies for P20 WIN. So metadata is first in line, probably in no small part because it is one of the least controversial areas. This is one I think everybody already does this. You document the data for your agencies. We keep an up-to-date data dictionary that helps with both transparency for the request process, kind of like the discussion we just had, that helps it so that someone from the external requester can kind of navigate and see the elements and the resources that are available to them. It helps with the actual management of the process. That's what allows us to document the data that's pulled for the different requests, what should be shared pursuant to the requests, and what the end recipient gets. And so there's a policy document and a process document that you all got from Katie earlier this week that Coral deserves a tremendous shout out for drafting and pulling together. The policy document has a purpose, a policy statement, which you have in front of you on the PowerPoint slide. They're accompanied with a data dictionary, which also, again, I want to give credit to Coral for developing, which I think is a really nice, easy to use tool that just gets what's in the data dictionary out there for requesters to kind of navigate. We're looking to try and make sure that we can bookend that with other documentation on what agencies provide. Some of the questions, even like what Michael's bringing up about the considerations for particular data sets. So it's not just a list of elements, it's some of the context around that. But this policy is pretty narrowly focused on documenting the metadata, keeping that up to date on essentially an annual basis for each agency, and having both the policy, the purpose policy statement here, and then the process behind that, which is in kind of a separate document. Just for folks' sort of background as well, the templates and the toolkit we're using for the policy and process documents are ones that are developed for the national SLDS, state longitudinal data system community. So we're just using those toolkits. I think there's a variety of different ways to do this, and you may have seen or used a different approach to this in your own work. We're very open to modifying this, but this is kind of an out-of-the-box approach that was relatively easy to implement and kind of consistent with past practice. So this is the proposed language for the metadata management policy. Again, you have the full policy document and the process document in your emails. I think we want to see if there's any questions or discussion on it, if there's last revisions or changes, and then if folks feel ready for a vote, then we'll just kind of take a vote for this. I can't remember, Kate, if there's anyone missing. We could do sort of an email collection for this afterwards if someone's not here. I thought
I
we
think
had
we have everybody.
Okay, great. So let's see. I can't see the hands until I stop screen sharing. Any questions or comments on the policy or process documents? Any revisions, something we didn't catch in the earlier drafting? See any hands? Nothing? Katie, is there any?
So then can we get a motion?
I'm a member of the board, so I move that we vote to approve the metadata management policy and process documents.
And a second?
And this is Bob, I'll second it.
Okay. Great. So If there is no discussion, then we can go straight to a voice vote.
I'm just curious, would it be good to have a vote with hands versus a voice? You don't know who's
Sure.
responded and who hasn't.
Sure, that works too.
But people could do the virtual thing, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so all in favor, raise your virtual hand. Okay, cool.
I think we
And-
need Maura to vote for CCIC.
Oh.
Sorry,
Thought I saw more.
I might have missed something. Just mentally counting.
Sorry, I
Although,
don't know why my hand is not showing, but
Oh, you might
my
be.
hand is raised.
You're external.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks. It passes.
All right. Thank you. This again, this is like the easiest policy. You already are all doing this, but it's a good way to document sort of the standard practice and the way in which we want this to move forward. And if there's modifications, then we'll go and make the modifications, bring it back to the board for approval, so on. I think this is good practice. As you all know, I think there's a queue of these in the hopper, and so we'll bring more of these similar for documents forward. But that's great. Thank you, everyone, for. Oh, I have to lower my hand. Thank you, everyone, for.
So just a
Going
minor
through
thing, could make sure you send them out again now without the draft watermark? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Going up on the website, whole 9 yards. So.
Okay, so the next item up for discussion is a security incident discussion. So we're gonna move to executive session. We'll stop recording and then just ask anybody who's not an official member or staff of the agencies to please exit the meeting.